Snow fell in thick, slow flakes, turning the city into a soft white painting. Cars rushed home, windows glowing with warm yellow lights. Laughter, music, families. But on the hill above the town, one mansion stood almost completely dark. Only one light was on. In the study, on the top floor. Inside, an elderly man sat alone at a long wooden desk. His name was Alexander Cole. To the world, he was a billionaire, a legend, a man who built an empire. But at that moment, he was just an old man with shaky hands, staring at a photo frame. In the photo, a much younger Alexander stood beside a smiling woman and a little boy in a red sweater. The boy's missing front tooth made his grin even wider. They were in front of a Christmas tree, arms wrapped around each other. Alexander's fingers brushed over the glass. "Eleanor, Daniel," he whispered. His voice cracked. He closed his eyes. The house groaned softly as the wind pushed against its walls. Outside, the world was celebrating. Inside, time had stopped years ago. Every Christmas, for 15 long years, Alexander had done the same thing. He ordered an expensive dinner from the best hotel in town. A perfectly roasted turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, fresh bread, expensive wine. The table in his enormous dining room was set for 6 people. But he ate alone, every single year. He stood up slowly, joints protesting, and walked to the window. Down below, he could see the town. Tiny lights, tiny people. He saw shadows passing behind curtains, children running. He imagined the sound of wrapping paper tearing, the squeal of surprise, a mother's gentle laughter, a life he used to have. He turned away sharply. "Enough," he muttered. He didn't want to remember, because remembering hurt, and yet, forgetting felt even worse. Far away, in a small diner at the edge of town, another Christmas story was unfolding. The diner was almost empty. A tired Christmas song played from an old speaker. The neon sign outside flickered. At a corner table, a little girl with messy brown hair pressed her nose to the window, watching the snow. "Mom, look," she whispered. "It's like the sky is giving us sugar." Her mother smiled weakly as she wiped down a table. Her name was Lena, and she wore a faded red waitress uniform. There were dark circles under her eyes, but her smile for her daughter never changed. "I know, Mia," she said softly. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Mia nodded. "Are we going to have a tree this year?" Lena's hand paused on the table, just for a moment. Then she forced another smile. "Maybe a small one. We'll see. Okay?" Truth was, they could barely afford rent. The tiny apartment they lived in had a heater that worked only when it wanted to. There were no presents hidden in any cupboard. No big family. No fancy dinner. But Lena had promised herself one thing. Mia would still feel loved, even if they had nothing else. The bell over the diner door rang as the last customer left. The manager waved lazily. "Lock up when you're done, Lena, and don't forget to turn off the sign." "Merry Christmas," he said without really looking at her. "Merry Christmas," she replied, her voice soft. She finished cleaning, grabbed her worn-out coat, and helped Mia into hers. The girl's shoes were too thin for the snow, but she didn't complain. Outside, the wind bit at their cheeks. Lena took her daughter's hand. "Ready to go home, baby?" Mia nodded, but her teeth were already chattering. They reached their old car at the back of the diner. The engine coughed, tried, died. Lena tried again. Nothing. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel for a second. Just 1 second of silence. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "It's okay. We'll walk. It's not that far." But it was far, especially in the snow, especially with a child. They started walking, their breaths turning into small white clouds. As they walked through the nicer part of town, Mia stared at the houses. Lights in every window, trees glittering inside, voices, warmth. "Mom," Mia whispered. "Do rich people ever feel lonely?" Lena tightened her grip on her hand. "I don't know, baby," she said. "Maybe. Money doesn't hug you at night." Then, as they turned a corner, they saw it. The mansion on the hill. Tall iron gates. Long driveway. Huge windows. Almost all dark. But one window high above glowed faintly. Mia slowed down. "It looks sad," she said. Lena almost laughed at the idea of a house looking sad. But she understood. The place did feel empty, like a beautiful shell with no soul inside. A cold gust of wind whipped past them. Mia shivered hard. Lena looked around. There was nowhere open, nowhere to warm up. If they kept walking in the snow with Mia already freezing, her heart pounded. Her eyes went back to the mansion. "No," she whispered to herself. "They'll think we're begging." But then Mia coughed. A small, dry cough that cut right through her. Lena swallowed her pride. "Come on," she said softly. "We'll just ask to use the phone. Then we'll leave. Okay?" They pushed open the iron gate. It creaked loudly in the quiet night. Every step toward the mansion felt heavier. The closer they got, the more Lena could see their reflections in the glass. She saw her messy hair, her cheap coat, her daughter's worn-out shoes. She wanted to turn back, but she couldn't. They reached the massive front door. Lena lifted her hand to knock, then froze for a heartbeat. What kind of person lived here? What kind of person spent Christmas in a house like this, with only one light on? Her knuckles hovered inches from the wood. Then she took a shaky breath and knocked. Once, twice. Then she waited in the silence. As snow kept falling around them, for a few seconds nothing happened. The mansion stayed silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the wind, just the snow. Mia squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom, maybe no one's home," she whispered. Lena swallowed. "Maybe. Let's just wait a little." She heard a faint sound then. A slow, dragging step. Another. Someone was coming. Inside, Alexander Cole frowned as he walked down the stairs. Who on earth would knock on his door on Christmas Eve? He never had visitors. He made sure of it. The staff had gone home hours ago. He insisted. "Go be with your families," he told them. "I don't need anyone." He lied. But it was easier that way. He reached the door and peered through the small peephole. A woman, young, tired, and a little girl in a too-thin coat, jumping from foot to foot. His first instinct was to turn away, probably selling something, or begging, or who knew. His hand tightened on the doorknob. But then he saw the little girl's lips. They were turning slightly blue. He sighed and unlocked the door. When he opened it, the cold rushed in like an unwelcome guest. The woman straightened quickly. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice polite, almost apologetic. "I'm so sorry to bother you. Our car broke down and my phone died. We're just trying to get home. Could we please use your phone? We won't take much of your time." Alexander stared at her for a moment, then at the little girl. Large brown eyes, red nose, shivering. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. "I'm Lena," she replied. "And this is my daughter, Mia." Mia gave a small wave, her teeth chattering. Hi," she whispered. Alexander hesitated. Letting them in meant letting something new into his house, letting warmth back in. And he wasn't sure he was ready for that. But he also wasn't a monster. "Come in," he said finally. The relief on Lena's face was visible. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you so much." They stepped inside. The warmth of the house wrapped around them slowly. Mia's eyes grew wide as she looked around. The entrance hall was huge. Marble floor, tall staircase, paintings on the walls, a crystal chandelier hanging far above. "Whoa," she whispered. "It's like a castle." Alexander closed the door behind them. "It's just a house," he muttered. He led them toward a sitting room near the front. The room was beautiful but strangely lifeless. Everything perfectly arranged. No mess. No open books. No signs of anyone really living there. On the low table, a single glass of untouched wine sat beside a folded napkin. "You can use the phone over there," he said, pointing to a sleek device on a side table. "Thank you," Lena said again. She walked over and dialed the number of a friend who lived across town. No answer. She tried the diner. No answer. No taxis were picking up. It was Christmas Eve. Everyone was home. Her shoulders drooped. Is there a problem? Alexander asked carefully. She turned to him, embarrassment burning her cheeks. I'm so sorry, she said. No one's picking up. I don't want to be a burden. We'll just rest here for 5 minutes and then… Absolutely not, he cut in sharply. You're not taking that child back out into this weather. He sounded annoyed, but Mia looked up at him with gratitude, not fear. Thank you, mister, she said softly. Your house smells nice. Like cookies, but sad. Alexander blinked. Cookies, but sad? Mia nodded. Like when you bake cookies, but no one comes to eat them. A strange expression crossed his face. He thought of the untouched feast in the dining room. The table set for 6. He cleared his throat. Have you eaten? He asked. Lena shook her head quickly. We're fine, really. We'll eat when we get home. Mia lowered her gaze. Her stomach growled softly, betraying the lie. Silence stretched between them. In that silence, Alexander heard something else. He heard his own heart, beating in a house that was too quiet. Come, he said abruptly. Follow me. He led them down the hall. The dining room doors swung open, revealing a table covered in silver dishes and steaming food. Mia gasped. Mom! Lena stared. Oh my God! A golden turkey, potatoes, vegetables, bread, desserts. Enough food for a large family. But only one place had been set. At the head of the table. Lena turned to him. Were you expecting someone? She asked gently. Alexander's jaw tightened. No. Mia, in her innocent confusion, frowned. Then, why do you have all this food? And only one plate? He didn't have an answer. Not one he wanted to say out loud. He looked at the tiny girl, then at her mother, standing there in second-hand coats, half frozen and hungry. Something heavy shifted inside his chest. Sit, he said. Lena shook her head immediately. No, sir, we can't. This is your dinner. You paid for it. I said sit, he repeated more firmly. Then he added, softer, please. The word please felt rusty on his tongue. Lena slowly pulled out a chair for Mia. The little girl sat down carefully, as if afraid she might break something just by breathing. Alexander watched them, 2 strangers at his table. For the first time in 15 years, he wasn't alone on Christmas Eve. He took a deep breath and sat too. As they began to eat, the clinking of cutlery replaced the crushing silence that had lived in that room for so long. But under that new sound, under the small smiles and shy glances, something was waking up. A ghost from the past. A memory he had tried to bury. Because across the table, the way Mia's eyes sparkled at the food, she looked just a little too much like his son once had. And that terrified him. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Mia ate cautiously at first, as if someone might suddenly take the plate away. Then, when she realized no one would, she took bigger bites. This is the best turkey ever, she mumbled with her mouth full. Mia, Lena whispered. Chew slowly. Alexander watched them, his expression unreadable. You said your car broke down, he finally said quietly. Where were you coming from? The diner on Maple Street, Lena replied. I work there. I just finished my shift. On Christmas Eve? He asked. She gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. Bills don't care what day it is. He nodded slowly. He understood money. Too well. But not the way she did. What about the girl's father? He asked, without thinking. Lena's smile faltered. For a moment, pain flashed in her eyes. It's just me, she said softly. He left when I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for responsibility. She forced a tiny laugh, but it didn't reach her eyes. But that's okay. I have Mia. She's enough. Mia looked up. You're enough too, Mom, she said firmly. The simple sentence made something twist in Alexander's chest. He looked down at his plate, pushing food around with his fork. What about you, sir? Mia suddenly asked. He glanced up. What about me? Why are you eating all by yourself on Christmas? She asked. Don't you have family? The words hung in the air. Lena's eyes widened. Mia. No, Alexander said quietly. He set his fork down. It's all right. He sat back in his chair, staring at the empty seats around the table. I had a wife, he began slowly, and a son. They were everything. His gaze drifted to the far corner of the room, to a spot only he could see. We used to decorate that corner with the biggest Christmas tree we could find. My son Daniel, he loved Christmas. He loved the lights, the music, the stupid sweaters his mother made us wear. A faint, broken smile tugged at his lips. He would jump on my bed at 5 a.m, Alexander continued, and beg to open presents. We'd eat pancakes shaped like snowmen. My wife would burn half of them, but we ate them anyway. His voice started to shake. One Christmas Eve, 15 years ago, I had a big business deal closing the next day. I was angry, stressed. My wife wanted to drive to her parents' house with Daniel. I told her to wait for me. She said I was working too much. We argued. He paused. The room felt colder all of a sudden. She left anyway, he whispered. Took the car. I stayed here, alone, angry, justifying it with words like responsibility and success. His knuckles turned white as he gripped his napkin. They never made it, he said, his voice breaking. It was snowing. The roads were bad. A truck lost control. He couldn't say the rest. Lena's hand flew to her mouth. I'm so sorry, she whispered. Mia stared at him, tears filling her eyes. They went to heaven, she said gently, as if explaining something simple and kind. Alexander closed his eyes. Yes, he whispered. And I stayed here, with my money, my companies, my empty house, my guilt. Silence. You could almost hear the clock in the hallway ticking. I never put up a tree again, he continued. Never celebrated. Never invited anyone. The only thing I do is order dinner, set the table, and remember how it feels to eat with ghosts. He gave a humorless laugh. It's pathetic, isn't it? Lena shook her head immediately. It's human, she said. You lost everything. Anyone would break a little after that. Mia slid off her chair and walked around the table. She stopped beside Alexander, her tiny hand resting gently on his sleeve. Did you ever tell them you were sorry? She asked. He looked at her, confused. I talk to their picture sometimes, he admitted. But it doesn't change anything. Mia shook her head. That's not what I mean, she said. Did you forgive yourself? The question sliced straight through him. He opened his mouth, closed it. He had forgiven everyone. The truck driver, the weather, even the universe. But himself? Never. He suddenly felt very small in his own enormous house. Lena watched them, her throat tight. She saw something soft, fragile, opening in his eyes. A door he'd kept shut for 15 years. Sir, she said gently, can I ask you something? He looked at her. Why did you let us in? She asked. You could have sent us away. You don't know us. But you let two strangers into your home. On a day you hate. Why? He stared at her, unsure of the answer at first. Then he looked at Mia, at her shivering hands, at the hunger she had tried to hide, at her brave questions. I don't know, he said quietly. Maybe I was tired of the silence. Mia smiled through her tears. Silence is louder than crying sometimes, she said. For the first time in a long time, Alexander let out a real breath. Not a sigh, not a forced inhale, just a breath. He noticed something then. In the corner of the dining room, half covered by a white sheet, stood a dusty box. Inside that box, he knew, were ornaments, lights, and a star that had once sat on top of a tree his son decorated. Mia followed his gaze. What's that? She asked. Nothing, he said quickly. Just old stuff. Mia slipped her hand into his. Can we see the old stuff? She asked softly. He hesitated. If he opened that box, he would also open 15 years of memories. of laughter, a pain. But then he looked at Lena, at this young woman who had walked into his home with nothing but her pride, her daughter, and a tired smile. He stood up slowly. "All right," he said. "Let's see the old stuff." He walked to the corner and pulled the sheet away. Dust floated into the air like tiny ghosts. As he opened the box, Mia's eyes lit up. "Wow," she whispered. "It's Christmas." Old, tangled lights, hand-painted ornaments, little crafts made from paper and glitter, a childish drawing of a crooked Christmas tree with 3 stick figures holding hands beneath it. Daniel, Eleanor, Alexander. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. He could almost hear his son's voice. "Dad, look, I made us." His throat closed up. Lena stepped forward carefully. "We don't have to," she said softly. "If it hurts too much." He shook his head. "No," he whispered. Maybe it's time." He turned to Mia. "Would you like to help me decorate a tree?" he asked. Her face lit up like the lights in the box. "Really?" she gasped. "Yes," he said. "But we'll have to find one first." He walked to another door and opened it, revealing a small storage room. Inside, a fake Christmas tree stood in 2 pieces, untouched for years. As they carried it into the living room together, placing it near the big window, something strange happened. The house felt different, lighter, less like a tomb, more like a home. As Mia started hanging ornaments, humming a Christmas carol, Alexander stood back for a moment. He watched her. He watched Lena, and he realized something terrifying. He was starting to feel alive again. Colored lights blinked faintly as Mia and Lena carefully hung ornaments on the tree. Some were chipped, some were faded, but as they caught the glow of the lamps, they looked almost magical. Mia giggled as she held up a small, uneven star made from old cardboard and glitter. "Did your son make this?" she asked. Alexander nodded slowly. "Yes, he was 7. He told me it was better than the boring store stars." Mia grinned. He was right. She climbed onto a small stool, balancing carefully as she reached up to place the star near the top of the tree. Lena hovered right behind her, ready to catch her if she slipped. Alexander's heart jumped with every wobble. "Be careful," he said softly. Mia stuck her tongue out in concentration, then finally placed the star on a high branch. "There," she said proudly. "Now it's perfect." Lena smiled, her eyes shining. "You did great, baby." The room glowed now. The lights reflected in the window, making it look like there were 2 trees. One inside, one in the glass world outside. Alexander walked over and plugged in another string of lights. They flickered to life, wrapping the tree in soft color. For a moment, the 3 of them just stood there. No one spoke. They didn't have to. The house, which had been suffocating in silence for years, was breathing again, with faint hums, little gasps of wonder, soft footsteps on the rug. "How do you feel?" Lena asked quietly, glancing at him. He stared at the tree. "I feel..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Scared. Scared," Mia repeated, tilting her head. "Why?" "Because this feels nice," he admitted. "And nice things tend to go away." The honesty in his voice made Lena's chest ache. "Not all of them," she said gently. "Some stay, if we let them." A comfortable stillness settled over them. Then Mia's stomach growled again, louder this time. She giggled. "Oops." Alexander almost smiled. "I suppose we should go back and finish dinner," he said. They returned to the dining room, but something had changed. The food was the same. The candles were the same. But the air felt warmer now. As they sat, Mia began asking questions between bites. "Do you have friends? Did you ever build a snowman? What's your favorite Christmas song?" Alexander answered as best as he could. "Friends? Not really. Snowman? Yes, once, a very lopsided one with Daniel. Song? A carol Eleanor used to hum while cooking. When Mia started humming it, off-key but sweet, he had to put his fork down. His eyes filled with tears. Lena noticed and gently changed the subject. "Sir," she said, "you've done a lot in your life, haven't you? Built businesses. Made money. Helped people, I'm sure. He shrugged. Charities. Donations. Foundations. It's all numbers on paper. But this, she continued, sharing a table, letting two strangers in, talking about your past. That's not numbers. That's brave. He looked at her, surprised. Brave, he repeated. I don't feel brave. I feel old. And tired. Tired people can be brave too, she said. Sometimes braver than anyone else. He stared at her for a moment. There was something in her eyes he recognized. The weight of responsibility. The constant counting of every dollar. The fear of not being enough. Are you in trouble? He asked suddenly. Financially. Lena froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I'm managing, she said quickly. That's not what I asked, he replied quietly. Her shoulders slumped. Our landlord gave us until the end of the month to pay what we owe, she admitted. If we don't, we have to leave. I've been taking double shifts. That's why I was still working tonight. I didn't want Mia to know, but she always senses things anyway. Mia looked at her mother, eyes wide. We might lose our home? She asked. Lena swallowed hard. I was hoping I'd fix it before you had to worry about it, she said softly. I'm sorry, baby. Mia reached for her hand. It's okay. As long as we're together, right? Lena's voice broke. Yes, as long as we're together. Alexander listened silently. He had more money than he could ever spend. Properties he never visited. Cars he never drove. And here was a woman working herself to the bone to keep a roof over her daughter's head. He felt something burning in his chest. A mix of anger, guilt, responsibility. Without thinking too much, he excused himself and stepped out into the hallway. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. Martin, he said when his lawyer answered. I know it's Christmas Eve. I don't care. I need you to do something for me. He glanced back toward the dining room. He could hear Mia's faint laughter. I want to set up a fund, he continued, for a girl named Mia and her mother, Lena. Enough to pay off their debts. And more. I want to secure their future. And another thing, I want to expand the charity foundation in Eleanor and Daniel's name. Feed families. Provide homes. Especially on Christmas. His lawyer was silent for a second on the other end. Are you sure, Mr. Cole? He finally asked. Alexander's gaze rested on the glowing tree in the next room. I've never been more sure of anything, he said. Prepare the documents. We'll sign them after the holidays. For now, arrange a payment to clear their rent immediately. Quietly. I don't want them to know it's me until I tell them myself. He ended the call and stood there, leaning against the wall. For a moment, he just listened. Mia's voice floated out. Mom, do you think he's lonely? Lena's reply came, soft. I think he's hurting. That's different. Hurt people sometimes lock themselves away. Alexander closed his eyes. He had locked himself away for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to open the door. Now, two strangers had knocked, and somehow stepped right into his heart. He took a deep breath and walked back into the dining room. Mia looked up, her cheeks full of mashed potatoes. Where'd you go? She asked. Just some overdue business, he replied. She grinned. On Christmas. He smiled faintly. Some things can't wait. Later that night, after dinner, the power flickered. Once, twice. Then the lights went out. Mia yelped in surprise. It's okay, Lena soothed. It's just a blackout. Alexander felt around for a drawer and pulled out a box of candles. He lit them one by one, placing them around the room. The soft glow made everything look warmer, softer. The tree lights went dark, but the candles gave the room a golden heart. Mia's eyes sparkled. It's like we're in a storybook, she whispered. They moved to the living room, sitting on the floor near the tree, wrapped in blankets. Tell us a story, mister, Mia begged suddenly. Please. Alexander hesitated. He hadn't told a story since Daniel. But those eyes. He cleared his throat. Once upon a time, he began slowly, there was a very foolish king. He thought his gold was more important than his family. As he spoke, Lena watched him. The way his face softened. The way his voice lowered when it reached the sad parts. The way Mia leaned closer, completely mesmerized. In that moment, it wasn't a billionaire, a waitress, and her daughter in that room. It was something else. Something simpler. Something rarer. A man. A woman. A child. 3 lonely souls holding on to a fragile, shared warmth in a house that had finally come back to life. And as the night deepened and snow wrapped the world in silence, Alexander made a decision. He would never spend another Christmas alone again. If they would let him. By the time Alexander finished his story, Mia was fighting sleep. Her head kept nodding. Her eyelids fluttered. But she refused to lie down. "I don't want this night to end," she mumbled. Lena smiled sadly. "Every night ends, sweetheart. That's what makes it special." Alexander stood up slowly, his knees cracking a little. "You can sleep in the guest room tonight," he said. "Both of you. It's too late and too cold to walk back now." Lena opened her mouth to protest. "Sir, we've already taken too much." He held up a hand. "You've given more than you've taken," he said quietly. "You gave me company. You gave me courage. Let me give you a bed for one night." She studied his face. This wasn't pity. This was gratitude. She nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. He showed them to a cozy guest room with a large bed and thick blankets. The room smelled faintly of lavender. Mia jumped on the mattress with delight. "It's so soft," she laughed. Lena tucked her in while Alexander stood awkwardly near the door, unsure if he should stay or leave. "Good night, mister," Mia said, snuggling into the pillows. "Thank you for sharing your house and your heart." His breath caught in his throat. "Good night, Mia," he replied softly. As he turned to leave, Mia called out again. "Wait." He paused. "Yes, next Christmas," she said, half asleep. "Don't be alone, okay?" He smiled, his eyes moist. "I'll try," he said, but deep down he knew he wasn't going to try. He was going to make sure. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows, reflecting off the snow. For the first time in years, Alexander woke up on Christmas Day without dread sitting on his chest. He dressed and made his way downstairs. In the kitchen, he found Lena trying to make coffee. "I'm so sorry," she said immediately. "I was just looking for some mugs. I thought I'd make you breakfast to say thank you." He chuckled softly. "I have a chef who cooks better than both of us," he said. "But he's off today, so you may actually be my only hope." They shared a quiet laugh. Mia appeared moments later, hair messy, eyes bright. "Is it still Christmas?" she asked. Alexander nodded. "Yes, it is." They ended up throwing together a simple breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, and the leftover desserts from the night before. They ate at the kitchen table this time. Smaller, cozier. "I need to ask you both something," Alexander said after a while. Lena looked at him, wary. "I made a decision last night," he continued. "I've spent 15 years punishing myself. Punishing this house. Punishing Christmas." He took a breath. "I can't change what happened to my wife and son," he said. "But I can change what happens to the rest of my life. And maybe to yours." Lena frowned slightly. "Sir, what do you mean?" He looked at her directly. "Your rent is paid," he said. "In full. For the year." Her fork fell to her plate with a soft clink. "What?" she whispered. "And starting next month," he added, "you won't be working late nights at the diner anymore. Not unless you want to." He slid an envelope across the table. Inside, there was an official letter. "I'm funding a community kitchen in the lower part of town," he explained, "in memory of my wife and son. It will serve free meals to families who can't afford them. I need someone honest, strong, and kind to help run it. Someone who knows what it means to struggle, but doesn't let it turn her cold. I want you to manage it, Lena, with a proper salary, benefits, stability." Lena stared at him, speechless. Tears filled her eyes. "Why?" she finally managed to choke out. "Why us?" "Because you knocked on my door," he said simply, "when I had locked the world out. Because you still carry dignity even when life isn't fair. Because your daughter asked if I was lonely, and no one has asked me that in 15 years. He turned to Mia. And because this little girl reminded me what it feels like to be seen. Mia's lips trembled. Are we your friends now? She asked. He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. If you'll have me, he replied. Lena covered her face with her hands for a moment, overwhelmed. Then she looked up. Thank you, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you so much. You didn't have to. I did, he said firmly. Not out of charity, out of purpose. You gave me a reason to live these days again, not just survive them. He hesitated, then added softly, I'd like to invite you both every Christmas, not as guests who got lost in the snow, but as family. We can invite others too. Turn this big, empty place into something it should have been long ago. Mia slid off her chair and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You can be our grandpa, she said into his shirt. If you want. He froze. Then, slowly, his arms came up and closed around her. He held on. I would like that, he whispered, his voice thick. More than anything. Lena watched, tears streaming down her cheeks. In that moment, she didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a broken old man. She saw a grandfather who had finally found someone to buy presents for again. Someone to worry about. Someone to love. Outside, the snow continued to fall. But inside the mansion, something had changed forever. Years later, people in town would talk about the rich old man on the hill who opened his doors every Christmas to anyone who was alone, hungry, or cold. They would talk about the warm lights glowing from every window, the sound of laughter spilling out into the snow, the children running through the halls as if they had always belonged there. They would talk about the waitress who became the heart of a community kitchen, and the little girl who knocked on a door and accidentally rescued a billionaire from his own loneliness. But for now, on that first morning, it was just 3 people sitting at a kitchen table, sharing simple food and quiet smiles. A new kind of family, a new kind of Christmas. And all because one snowy night, a young mother chose to swallow her pride and knock. If you saw a lonely house with just one light on during Christmas, and you felt someone inside might be hurting, not just rich, would you knock on that door, or would you keep walking? Why?